UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. This is the coming great deception. However, when we go up, they come down. When we go up, they show up. I've got an expert here with me, and I'll introduce him in just a second after a word from our sponsor. This is going to blow your mind, and I haven't heard what this gentleman has to say, so we're experiencing it together. But here's a word from our trusted sponsor. Folks, this is the Noble Gold Investments Market Update. Gold is up 46% in a year, doubling NASDAQ and S&P 500 gains. But this isn't just another rally. Global reserves are shifting as investors rush to secure physical gold, creating a massive supply gap. Gold is vanishing from the market, but you still have a chance. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com today and turn their panic into profit. Make a qualified investment, and Noble Gold will add a free 1/10 of an ounce gold coin to your order. Folks, Peggy and I did this 2 years ago. Best thing we ever did. I predict it's going to go way over 3,000. That's conjecture on my part. There's always a risk with any type of transaction like this, but I'm glad we did it, and I have a lot of confidence in Noble Gold. Once again, noblegoldinvestments.com, noblegoldinvestments.com. So, Alan and Terry, first of all, thanks for coming in and weighing in on this. So before we get in with Alan and Terry, what I want to do here is show the clip from Skinny Bob. So here's the clip, and then we'll weigh in on it right after that. So, Alan and Terry, thanks, first of all, for coming on the record. You've been involved in puppets, in animatronics for decades. So what is your take? And before you give us your take, just tell us some of the films, the things, the projects that you've worked on.
Okay. Oh gosh, I've been doing this for about 40 years. Golly, some of the stuff that would involve aliens, for instance, back at Steve Johnson's studio, I worked on at least 2 or 3 different big-headed aliens. there. For instance, one was for an episode of the new version of The Outer Limits. They were all big silicone headed, looked like grays. Some of the other aliens were for, if you've seen, and they didn't look like big bug-eyed aliens, the Abyss, the big transparent things that had lights in them, things like that. A lot of stuff at K&B effects. Looney Tunes back in action. There was an Area 52 with humor saying, I worked on the Triffid in that one, the robot, and there was an actual, like a gray about, Woody Bray, it was actually more of a fleshy thing, about 4 feet tall, that I know we had footage in the behind the scenes of it laying on a table in Area 52 headquarters laughing. But I just watched the sequence again recently. It's like, well, it's not in the finished film, so it must have been a behind the scenes thing, because that was something I, worked on specifically. The Austin Powers films, Star Trek First Contact, about 150 different movies and shows. I'm back in Ohio and I still do it here.
So, I mean, you're, in some ways, you're like in some ways, in many ways, you're an expert.
I've been around a lot of it and involved in a number of aspects. Like I said, there was also a commercial for a South Korean phone back in the 90s that we had to do a big giant-eyed alien type of thing that I was responsible for the skull mechanism for that one. And the things I'm describing are exactly the way I did that with the universal joint in the neck.
So when you're looking at Skinny Bob, what do you think we're looking at here?
I think it is a puppet. It's just there are certain clues about it, like the way that the eyes, they're kind of hard to read in the footage, but the normally the leading edge of the eyes, and actually that would be 2 eyelids that are being actuated, one from the top and one from the bottom, because even human eyes kind of both lids come up and down. This one, he was only going downwards for one. And second of all, normally we would use a hollow, like a vacuum form shell that the leading edge of the eyelid would be glued to. So it would come down like a full sweet coverage eyelid. This thing looks like it's only attached in the front, like either to a tab or like they tried to use a wire going across it. A lot of times we'll do lip mechanisms with wire with like 4 pulls on them to get puckering motions and things.
Wow.
This looked like it was a loop with just one pull in the middle with maybe a little brass tubing going across that pulled a little section of it up and down. And it looked odd in the front because it would pull that down, which would also pull, like they hadn't allowed for enough complete eyelid. And it looks like it's pulling the forehead meat down as well. And then when it tilts its head down, it looks even worse because it looks almost like a duckbill sticking outwards there, because it doesn't look like it's contacting the eye, but it's so shadowy under the eye, it's hard to tell anyway. The head looks, it looks like a puppet also because of how deep the pivot point is in the head. And that looks like a universal joint, which is the simplest way with a disc on either side. So you'd have 4-way wires to pull front and back and side to side. And that whole thing would be on a pivot attached to the skull up in the middle so that you could get, it'd be one control like this, where you'd use this to pivot it. And as long as you got your linkage tied down, you can pivot. You could tilt the head forward because this would push the rear pivot up, head moves down, move it back, tilt it to the right, tilt it to the left because you've got 4-way either cables or rods there. And then you could rotate the whole rod in the middle and you'd get the head turn. All in one neat, tidy control. You get one other control working those eyelids. I didn't see any I didn't notice any mouth movement.
So what about the hand when the hand's moving?
Well, that looks like that could be, that's a different setup, slightly from the side. But that looks like it most probably has rod extensions behind the elbows, because that way, like the hand movement, the simplest thing you could do for that is literally do you have water hookup for your refrigerator?
Sure.
Where it's got that thick plastic polypropylene too. It kind of keeps its shape. Well, you can use that, cut little notches in it, and run Dacron cord up through the middle. Really strong, like nylon type cord. Tie it in the fingertip, and you can make a little ring arrangement with basically like bicycle cables.
Wow.
If you pull the ring here, where you cut the little notches in the finger, it will make the fingers move and flow. I've thrown those together out of wood with a piece of aluminum and slices of PVC pipe for rings at the other end. And that could be at the end of a short rod, at the end of a hand, with just a sculpted rubber piece on the end that would do the movements. And a good example of a puppet like that, if you have seen Return of the Jedi, the big beast that Jabba the Hutt
Jabba the Hutt, right?
he drops Luke Skywalker into the pit with a big meat-eating thing that he shoves the bone. That was a hand puppet about 2 feet tall with arms and face and everything. That was actually a hand puppet. And the arms were done using the rods like I'm describing and using that very simple hand mechanism shot in semi-slow motion and, from their low angles and comped into the shot. All very low tech stuff. And that was in 1988, 89. Was it that late even? Return of the Jedi?
I don't know. My son-in-law is screaming at his monitor as he's editing this because he's a Star Trek, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings fan. So,
you got Star Trek and Star Wars.
No. I said Star Trek, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings. He's a fan of all of them. Yeah.
So he knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he's absolutely. But let me ask you this. I get it. There are hoaxes out there. We got fooled with the what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, come on. One who stuffs animals, taxidermist.
Oh, taxidermy.
Yeah, with the fairy. It fooled everybody. It fooled scientists looking at this thing. It fooled everybody till we got it. Once we got it in our possession, then we could examine it. We realized it was a construct. We went public with it immediately. My question to you is this: how much would it cost to make something like this, to film it, and why? I mean, what are we looking at here?
Well, I'm confident that we do have these things. I can't imagine that we don't.
What do you mean by that? We have these things.
I'm pretty confident we probably do. We have like alien bodies. I believe that we do. I don't think we're looking at one though, because there's other stuff like whenever he's tilting his head down, there really is no, for the size of that head, unless they are really, really, really small and their head isn't that big, I'm kind of thinking that that's looking like his head would weigh a lot. And I'm not seeing like any reaction either in the muscles in the back of his neck or anything down in these sizes of any consequence that look like it's cantilevering, something that probably weighs twice what our heads look like on a body that's incredibly skinny for that size. And I don't know if they come from, if it's supposed to represent something from a lower gravity planet, bigger. I mean, if it's lower gravity, I could see maybe where their heads will move around. But if our gravity is heavier here, that's got to be kind of trying, especially when you see the footage of them walking around.
Yeah, that was my next question. When you see a whole group of them come in, are these people in suits? I mean, what do we look, and why? Why would they? I mean, look, part of me wants to believe this, okay? Yeah, but the other part's going, not so fast, citizen, which is why you guys are on here talking about this. We want the truth. So, there was a clip we used in our Roswell film, which my business partner, Gil Zimmerman, he worked at DreamWorks and Disney for like 30 years, back and forth. This guy knows film. We both watched this one clip, 10 times. And it's a very elaborate, if it's a set, you're looking at how much money to create this thing. And all these people are running around. They bring in an alien, supposedly from Roswell, the crash. It's on a stretcher. The cameraman's trying to get a shot. People keep cutting in front of him. They could care less about the cameraman. They want to see what's on the stretcher. I get that. I mean, there's all sorts. Everybody's in 1940 military guard. It's in black and white. It looks like the real thing. We went with it. We really believe it's the real thing. Skinny Bob, I don't know what I'm looking at, which is why you're here. I mean, when all those people are walking through, could you create costumes like that? Well, sure you can. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Well, the question is why, and
Why exactly?
actually, it's been attributed to the Russians. I can probably see that because, first of all, somebody here would have opened their mouths, but I don't think anybody ever took the credit for that one alien autopsy thing from that.
Yeah, I believe the alien autopsy is a hoax. I do.
That looks like a latex and polyfoam.
Yeah, but I think it's a hoax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, when you look at it, I can't.
Santilli. The guy's name is Santilli.
Okay, yeah, because I remember watching that and seeing Stan Winston, who I'd worked with, say, "That's incredible. I'd hire that guy." What? Stan? No. You've done better aliens than that. So, but I think he was just playing for the camera, I believe. But I could believe I would believe that it was something that the Russians did, which would, I think, explain that little thing at the beginning that looked like a Russian Federation type thing.
Yeah.
I think one of the other tapes or one of the other videos up there mentioned that it was from another Russian UFO video that was definitely stated to be a hoax that had this flying saucer that was crashed. Now, I saw that once. I haven't seen it again, but I'm making a point to look for it, of course.
So in your opinion, the Skinny Bob videos are some sort of a created hoax. Again, how much money are we looking at to make something like this?
Well, that probably was paid for in rubles. If it was something where they were trying to disseminate information, possibly. I don't know. It could be a matter of somebody saying, "I bet I could do this." If you've got the skill set, the money is not that much. It's just knowing how to get from point A to point C. And if you're doing this just to satisfy your own personal ego, you can start sculpting on something this out of an oil-based clay and take a few months to do it. Earn some money, make a mold, do a core, so you can end up with a skin. And then, because literally some of these things that I worked on, some of these type of things for some of the commercials where we had very little time, we weren't necessarily working for big pay. It's a fun job, and it was California money. It was good money, but it was a blast to do. And so you'd work, a couple long hours for a couple of weeks, and you'd have a body. Between you and your 6 friends, you can get it done in that kind of time. You've got somebody who's a good sculptor, somebody who can make molds. The mechanics can be, like I said, very simple. A lot of those internal parts will just be universal joints and then puppet rod extensions, polypropylene knuckles. the inside of the head, once you figure out like mechanics, it's like, okay, it's once you've done one, you've done them all. If you're going to have the mouth opening, you need parallel points going through the jaws. You're going to be using a fiberglass shell that you make from a core. You're going to be cutting that apart. You'll be mounting the eyes if they move.
So you've been doing this for decades. You are a trained professional. We got some of your accolades and your work, the corpus of your work before the interview. So without putting words in your mouth, in your opinion, this is a construct. This is a puppet. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is. And material wise, as far as getting the materials to make it, between sculpting materials, mold making materials, if you're making something about the size of, like, say, a 4.5-foot tall, large headed, but slender alien. And a lot of it is clothed, which is a thing that saves you from having to actually sculpt the whole body.
Sure.
That could be a foam construction underneath there with the armature inside it, which is basically almost like a pipe skeleton. Make it so that it can move a little bit back and forth, sway around, the arms move, the head moves. Material-wise for that can be had for, well, I believe maximum, material-wise, $10,000.
Well, okay.
That's all it is. I mean, because the clay and the silicone and all that, a 5-gallon bucket of this might be expensive, but you're not going to necessarily need that much. So probably 10 grand is just what you can do with the clay and being able to paint it. And even then, it's black and white. I don't think that was even silicone, to tell you the truth. I think it's foam latex,
Wow.
which is less expensive. And so just because it's so degraded, it didn't need the quality of the silicone. And there are some people that are saying, oh, it could be 3D. It's like, some of you guys have never touched a film camera and all that. So it's
Whole different deal.
Oh, that's what I started out on.
There you go.
I wanted to be a stop motion animator, film right there. So I was learning machinery in order to do armatures early on. The mystery of foam latex I figured out early on and all that. But, that would make it less expensive. Probably, the only thing that would be different, you just need an oven big enough to bake a head in. And the rest of it could be a foam constructed body, literally the type of things that is done for mascots. But the stuff that's used for cosplay now.
Okay.
A foam, which is very thin and stiff and can be nicely made into hollow but rigid patterns that would give you a nice body. Because looking, and that was the other thing, is kind of looking at the way the wardrobe was laying at it. It almost looked like that head came down, and then there was a little bit of where it would be, where it ended underneath there and is maybe up against whatever body form that they had underneath there. So, I mean, that would just make life so much easier. A lot of times, if you're doing something for a budget creature suit, the head, the hands, and the feet will be sculpted. The body might be something that is foam fabricated, so that you've got all the detail in the parts. When you see the monster, it's its mouth, it's its claws, it's its feet or something. The body, you'll see in the shots.
Who cares? Right.
This is the parts that's attacking. So you concentrate on the parts that you're going to see. And that's what a lot of that looked like. And I do find it interesting that the aliens are modest. I don't know if most reports of aliens, are they running around in uniforms?
Or no, they have uniforms, yeah, allegedly. Well, usually they're one-piece uniforms, which is kind of makes you sick. Okay, so first of all, thanks so much for coming on the record. Second of all of you that are watching this, help us out here. Now, I'm going with what, Alan and Terry are saying. I believe it's a puppet. I believe it's a construct. However, if you've got information out there that would sway the needle back the other way, shoot me an email la@lamarzulli.net, la@lamarzulli.net. If you got footage of the real thing, if you know someone that does, la@lamarzulli.net. We know that Area 51, all sorts of stuff happens there. So you never know. We don't have it until we ask. We're asking. If you've got something, shoot me an email. Alan and Terry, thanks so much for coming on the record, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely. There you have it, folks. Remember, UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. This is the coming great deception. But when we go up, they come down. When we go up, they show up. Thank you, Alan and Terry, for putting a bow on this and solving the mystery of Skinny Bob. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for having us on,
You
sir.
got it. We'll see you again real soon, folks.